Welcome to another Holistic Home Journey Growth Club session hosted by me, Crystal Kanata. I help parents break generational cycles of traditional yelling, shaming, hitting, punishing type of parenting by offering mindset shifts, judgment-free support, and tangible tools to parent in a more developmentally appropriate and holistic way. So inside of Growth Club, we work through top personal growth and parenting books. So right now we are doing How to Do the Work. And so we're working on kind of childhood trauma and healing so that we can take that and use it in our parenting so that we don't continue to have these same patterns that have been passed down from generation to generation. I can't speak today, I'm sorry. Okay, so today specifically, we're going to be talking about different types of trauma and different types of sort of like parent personalities and parent dynamics that can cause trauma, because it's not always just hitting, just physical punishment. And sometimes we will actually minimize our trauma if we didn't experience, harsh physical punishments or like the most extreme physical punishments. We will sort of try to minimize our childhood traumas. And often I think we almost might do that because, our parents weren't that bad. Our parents didn't mean any harm. But just because the harm was not meant, just because they weren't intentionally trying to hurt you, just because you don't have the same experience from your childhood that somebody else has, doesn't mean that these traumas can't be popping up in your adult life as different coping mechanisms. And so we want to start to look at that. We want to stop minimizing our experience. We want to start looking at, okay, what in my adult life that's feeling hard and feeling like I'm stuck and feeling like this isn't who I want to be, can be stemming from things in childhood. And more importantly, how do we start to work on those things so that we don't pass those cycles down to our children? So I'm going to talk about a couple of, where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to talk about the 6 different kind of type of parenting dynamics that she talks about in the book. And she makes it very clear in the book, and I want to make it very clear too, that this is not meant to like put you in a box. You don't want to say, well, okay, I received this type of trauma, or I don't fit into any of these boxes, so I must not have received trauma. These are just sort of examples of the types of things that you might have experienced in your childhood that could be leading to some of the things that you're experiencing now. So the first one we're going to talk about is when your parent denies your reality. And when we go through these examples, I really want to bring up even the smallest instances where this can work its way into the day-to-day, because oftentimes those small things, those small interactions is what adds up over time and is what we have the biggest power to help change. So some examples of like a parent denying reality is if your child says, oh, I'm so cold, and you're like, it's not cold in here, it's just you, right? Or your child says, oh, I'm so frustrated, I didn't get to the next level in this video game and whatever. And you say, it's just a game, get over it. Or the child says, this was so stressful, I'm having a really hard time with this. And you say, it's not that bad. It's denying their ability to receive their own reality, to think about what's happening in their own reality, to feel things that you're not feeling. And so when we do that, when we deny their reality, and we do so in such a way that we are almost shaming them for feeling that reality, they will start to look to others to define what is going on in their life, right? So when, think about this in the future, when they're feeling like, oh, this isn't safe, they're a teenager and they're feeling like this isn't safe. And their friend goes, of course it's safe. Come on, let's just go. You're just being dramatic. they're not going to have that inner voice that says, no, I can trust my instincts. I can trust what my body and my mind is telling me about my reality. Um, and they will move on that way. Hold on. I really need a moderator because I always have to stop to block people on my TikTok. I'm sorry. And if you're listening, this will eventually be on a podcast. So if you're listening, I'm sorry. I had to stop and block a creepy person. Okay. So the next sort of dynamic is a parent not seeing or hearing you. And so obviously they're physically seeing you, right? And they're physically like listening to your words, but just sort of feeling like you're there, but you're not there. They're there, the parent is there, but they're not really acknowledging you. And oftentimes this shows up in really stressful homes where the parent has a lot of pressure. And I know, like, I've even been here where it's like I was so wrapped up in my business or my job or whatever it was that like I was really just coasting during family times. Like I was there, but I wasn't really present. I didn't have that emotional availability to my child, to my children, and to my husband for that matter. And that can really affect them. And so sometimes we get stuck in the day to day. So that might look like, I don't have time to play. Like, I don't want to do that. I have other things to do. I have more important things to do, saying things like that. It's fine if you have things to do, but you want to look at how you're framing it. Like, these other things that I have to do are so much more important than what you have to say to me, what you're feeling, what you want to do. What helped me in that, to kind of break out of that a little bit, is to use a timer for myself. Like I will set a 30-minute timer, like, okay, I'm going to work for 30 minutes and then I'm going to play with you for 15 minutes, and like literally set the timer for me. I'll take my daughter's visual timer. Another sort of parent dynamic to look out for, to think about, was I treated this way? And also to think about, am I treating my child this way? Is like a parent who lives through their child. So the parent who always wanted to be a model, but their parents told them they would never make it. And so now they've got their child in all the modeling schools. The child hates the modeling, but the parent is pushing them, right? And this can also look at like, so that might be like an extreme, but it can also look like a parent who is only celebrating wins that the child achieves through something that resonates with them. So the child maybe is really into art, which the parent really loves too. And so the parent is like so excited when the child does anything artistic. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You're amazing. This is wonderful. But then the child is also really into video games or magic tricks. And when the child has an accomplishment in that realm, the parent is not really interested. Okay, well, when you're done wasting time on that video game, maybe you can go do something creative with your time, right? And the parent is showing like an extreme favoritism towards one specific activity that the child is doing because it fulfills something inside of them. And that can really give the child a lot of pressure to perform. And it also has the child lose pieces of them, right? Because if they're getting like so much praise for doing the thing that the parents really want them to do, and then they're feeling like an emotional pullback when they're doing the things that they want to do, what do you think they're going to start to do more of? They're going to start to do more of what the parent wants them to do, and they're going to try to let go of the pieces that are not as acceptable. Another example of a parenting dynamic to look out for is parents who don't model boundaries. And this can be in a couple of scenarios. So this could be a parent who doesn't model boundaries with other people. So with other friends, with other family, the parent is constantly sort of like being submissive to these things, not sticking up for themselves, not setting any boundaries. But it can also be that the boundary line between the parent and child. So think about the parent who, barges into their kid's room and says, there's no privacy in this house, or the kid locks the door and the parent takes the door off the hinges because you need to earn your privacy, or the parent who reads the child's journal or reads the child's text messages and then yells at the child for what they find in there, right? Those types of things is sort of like teaching the child that they are not allowed to have boundaries. They are not allowed to have personal space. They are not allowed to have thoughts that you don't approve of, or that don't pass by you. They're not allowed to have experiences that you don't agree with. And so we really want to make sure that we're modeling these boundaries, because we can talk to our kids about boundaries all day long. The other thing that she does bring up in the book is kind of crossing the boundary between the child being your child and the child being your peer. So, like, are you venting to your child about finances? Are you venting to your child about your spouse? Are you venting to your child about like other grown-up stresses? Because that will also put an undue burden on the child and also remove that healthy boundary there. So we got two more I want to talk about. So the next one is parents who are focused on, like, overly focused on appearance. Now, this can be focused on the child's appearance. So if you're constantly like, get over here, your hair's a mess, or, oh, that doesn't match, go take that off, that's ridiculous, why would you even think to wear that? Or, you know, you're in the store and the child's like, oh my God, mom, I love these shoes, I really want these shoes, and they're like, oh, those are like so gaudy, we need to stick with this aesthetic, you know, and constantly like critiquing the child's own sense of personal appearance, their own expression through their personal appearance. And then also when you're constantly critiquing yourself. So, and this was something that really resonated with me. It was just like I don't remember, there were certain things that my parents would actually make fun of me, mostly my dad, when I was growing up, that I still have insecurities about. But mostly what I saw was like my mom constantly critiquing other people, commenting on other people's clothing choices and weight, commenting on her own clothing choices and weight and looks and aging and all of those things. And your kids, regardless of how good or bad your relationship is with your kids, at like a biological level, they want to connect with you, they want to relate with you, they want to be like you. And so they're going to look at how you talk about yourself and to yourself, and they are going to internalize that. So, you know, we need to be mindful on how we are talking around those things. And it's pretty powerful, because once you realize that you have like eyes on you all the time, hearing how you're talking about yourself and looking at how you're treating yourself and how you look at yourself in the mirror, you might actually start to be a little bit kinder to yourself, because you don't want them to see you being unkind to yourself. So the last thing that I want to talk about is parents who don't regulate their emotions. So this can be, parent gets so angry and is throwing things and is screaming at the child and hitting the child, and doing really like absurd things like harsh punishments in the moment. Really just the grown up, the parent, is throwing a tantrum. And so the child sort of has one way now of learning how you deal with anger and emotions and sadness and disappointment, right? Because they're looking at what the parent is modeling. But what happens when a child starts throwing things and having a tantrum and yelling? They get in trouble, right? So the parent is modeling, this is how you handle your emotions, through this outward rage, right? And then the child is accepting what you're modeling and displaying it when they're having big emotions. And then the child is shut down for it and punished for it. So the child can either continue to manage their emotions that way, or they can completely shut down, because now they don't have any tools to manage their emotions or to emotionally regulate. They only have this rage, which gets them in trouble, or shut down, which doesn't get them in trouble, but also pushes down all of their feelings. So that was just a couple of the things to kind of keep an eye out for. And so these sort of the results of those types of traumas that are put into our day to day, those sort of pieces that are put into our inner voice that are, woven into the foundation of who we are, show up often in adult life as coping mechanisms. So we can become withdrawn, we can become super anxious, we can become very self-conscious, we can become angry, we can become dependent on other people to tell us our reality, all of these things, because we're living out these patterns and we're also coping, right? We're trying to protect that inner child. And they can also come out in adult life when we have our own kids as sort of passing down this generational trauma. This is what we mean when we say like passing down the generational trauma. It doesn't necessarily always mean that you are just standing there and beating your child to a pulp. It means I'm taking these patterns that were damaging to me in my childhood, and because I don't know any different, I am passing these down to my children, who will then pass them down to their children and their children. And so now when we talk about breaking a cycle, it's because once you learn how to acknowledge these traumas that may have happened to you and find better ways of dealing with it, now you won't treat your child that way. They won't treat their children that way. And so you are literally breaking this generational cycle. You are not just changing things for your life, you are changing things for the life of every generation in your family that comes after you. And that's why this is so powerful. And that's why this is so much work, it's because it's a lot. So, I want to leave you with an assignment, and you can either post the answer to your assignments or your thoughts about your assignment inside of the Growth Club community in the VIP membership. You can write it in a journal. You can just think about it. But I really want you to dive into what we just talked about and see how we can take this into your real life and make some changes. So your assignment is to look for the areas in your life now that feel stuck. You feel like you're not being your true self. You feel like you're not being the version of the mom or the wife or the friend or the sibling that you want to be. I want you to look at a couple of those areas. And I want you to think back, okay, how did this scenario play out when I was a kid? Like, I'm really, if I was to say, like, I'm really self-conscious about the way that I look, doesn't matter what I weigh, I'm always trying to lose weight. Okay, how did this scenario play out when I was a kid? Okay, everybody was always on a diet. Everybody was always getting made fun of if they were like a pound overweight, like all of these things, right? If I look at, like obedience might come up, right? Like if my child, like I feel really stuck, and this was actually in the beginning of my journey, really how I did feel. Like I feel really triggered when we're out in public and my kid isn't listening to me and I get really angry and I don't know what to do with that anger. Then you might rewind back and say, okay, well, what did this look like in childhood? Well, we needed to always be obedient in public or we were going to get it when we got home, right? How do I break that cycle? So I want you to look for areas that you feel stuck. Think about how those scenarios, those specific scenarios played out for you when you were a child. And then I want you to think about when you were that child experiencing those things, what do you wish would have changed in that moment? What do you wish your parent would have done different? Your teacher would have done different? Your friend would have done different? Well, how do you wish the scenario could have changed for you in that moment? And then can you make those changes now for your children? So that is your assignment. Just as a reminder, we are doing how to do the work. And this is all about healing trauma. I am finding a lot of value in this book. I actually had an emotional breakdown at the beginning of that chapter, just because when I was skimming through all of the different types of parenting dynamics that could cause trauma. I was like, oh my God, I relate to so many of these. Like, no, and I had like a no wonder I'm so messed up kind of moment. But once you kind of like break through that and allow yourself to have those feelings and allow yourself to like grieve, almost like grieve the childhood that you wish you had, then you can start making changes for your child. Um, because that is the only difference that can make. And when you start making those changes for your child, you will be healing your inner child. Your inner child will say, okay, good. Finally, somebody is sticking up for me. Somebody is teaching me the right way. Somebody is making a difference here. And that somebody is you. So you're doing a great job. I appreciate you being here. Make sure that if you're hearing this anywhere else besides inside of the VIP membership in the community, make sure you join over there because you can watch all of the replays. You can ask questions. You can interact with me. And it's a great place to drop your assignments so that we can all support you. So enjoy the rest of your day.